Alright, 100 days in hardcore Minecraft as a Reaper. In this video, I have a bunch of custom scythe weapons, and most of them have crazy abilities. To make the best ones, I had to defeat 3 custom bosses: the Nightmare Pegasus, the Thunder Slime, and the Elemental Golem. Each of these bosses has their own unique scythe that can be made with their drops, and they are definitely the most powerful. This world also has crazy dungeons, mobs, and more for me to take on with my custom scythes. Will I be able to survive long enough to defeat all 3 bosses and get the most powerful scythe? Let's find out. But first, let's find out about today's sponsor, Rec Room. Rec Room is a free-to-play game and is available on mobile devices, PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and VR. Not only that, but the game is cross-play, meaning you can be playing on your phone and be able to play with your friends on Xbox or PC or whatever. Pretty cool, right? Rec Room allows for you to create your own custom character with different cosmetics that you can unlock through achievements, challenges, or from the store. You can then use this character to play in millions of different rooms and games, many of which are created by the players. This game also has in-game voice chat, and you can use that to talk to your friends, your party, or anybody else in the same room as you. A lot of the games are also super fun. Here's some footage of me playing some dodgeball with my friend Sky. Yes, suck it! Yeet, got him.
Hits!
You do this to me. 2 shirts.
You win stuff? I didn't win anything.
Yeah.
I didn't win anything.
Shirt.
Hello? Look at these people trying to
Ready
steal
to
your
start.
shirt.
Shirt.
Alright, so yeah, Rec Room is free, it's cross-platform, available on all these devices, and it is a ton of fun. Download Rec Room for free by scanning the QR code on screen or by clicking the link in the description. Thank you again to Rec Room for sponsoring today's video, and now let's see how I do as a Reaper in hardcore Minecraft. Day 1, I spawned into a plains biome. One of my only videos ever so far that does not have a village spawn. Kinda crazy, right? I headed over to a nearby forest, got some wood, and then I made a wooden scythe, pickaxe, and axe. This was my first scythe. It wasn't anything crazy, but it would let me defend myself. Then I went over to a little cave, killed a skeleton with my scythe, and then I mined some stone and upgraded my tools and my scythe to stone. Next, I killed some cows for food, and then I found this little dirt version of an igloo. The loot was not great, as it usually is not for igloos, but I went ahead and converted the zombie villager because why not? I stole the bed from the igloo, and then I cooked my steak while I was waiting for the villager to convert. I found a little house with pots that gave me apples and potatoes, and then I started attacking these enchanted mobs that I saw underground. They reflected damage, and I definitely could not kill them all, so I gave up. I then got the achievement for Zombie Doctor, so I went back to check on my villager. His trades didn't end up being amazing, but in the future I had a bit of a use for this guy. You'll see. Also, these enchanted mobs were kind of everywhere, and their name tags were huge. Even the fish were enchanted. But at this point it was nighttime, so I slept. Day 2, I grabbed some flowers, and then I saw this beached whale, and then some seagulls stole my steak. I got one piece back, but then they ate the rest of it, so now I had to worry about food again. But I had a plan for that. I spent the rest of day 2 mining coal and iron. Mobs in the caves were kinda scary in the dark, so I tried to avoid fights whenever I could. Day 3, I cleared the entrance to this little wooden hut that I found and decided that that would be my temporary base. I began smelting some iron, and then I planted a few potatoes by the river. I then made an iron scythe, and I combined it with 4 flowers and 4 seeds to make the farming scythe. This scythe had an ability that would bone meal crops at the cost of durability. However, I then realized that it had a pretty long cooldown on the ability, so I quickly got that fixed in the mod. I then used most of my farming scythe's durability farming potatoes, and then I cooked them in the furnace. And then next I made an iron scythe, an iron pickaxe, and a set of shears. I waited around for my food to cook, and by the beginning of day 4, I had over a stack of baked potatoes, which should last me for a while. Now I wanted a backpack so I could go exploring or mining without my inventory filling up, so I went to look for sheep and cows. I saw this crazy looking building with mobs with enchanted armor, and I would definitely want better gear before trying to take that on. It took me all of day 4 to finally find some cows, and I even found a pink sheep, which I'm pretty sure is really rare, so that's lit. The next morning I killed a horse for some more leather, and then I headed home to make my backpack. I made the biggest backpack that I could make, and then I dyed it red because why not? I stored all of my items in there because I didn't really plan on coming back to this wooden hut ever again. I cooked the meat that I got the day before, and then I set out to find a place to permanently live. I killed these weird glowy wisps in the water. I don't really know what they were meant for, but they were weird and I didn't really want to trust it, so I just took them out. I looted a ruined portal, but the loot was pretty trash and I kept exploring, but I really wasn't finding anything. That is, until day 6. I found a really nice flat-ish area in an extreme hills, and I figured it would be a really good spot to build a base. I would definitely have to deal with the nearby dungeon one day, but I was far enough away that I should be safe for now. I ended up spending the entirety of day 6 digging out all the dirt to flatten the area completely. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to build yet, so I just placed a few chests to put my stuff in. Day 7, I gathered a bit of wood to keep in my backpack, and then I decided that I needed to mine. I had no armor, and there were a ton of cool scythes that I wanted to make, so I needed a lot of resources. I staircased down and ended up digging into a mine shaft. This was actually perfect because I needed cobwebs to make one of the scythe types. I gathered cobwebs and I mined a ton of iron. I left the mine shaft and I kept digging down, and then I ended up finding a ton of these basalt blocks which I could use to build my base, so I gathered a bunch. Day 8, my pick durability was not looking too hot, so I took a break to smelt the iron that I mined so far. Once it was all smelted, I made another iron pickaxe and a full set of iron armor. I ended up finding another mine shaft, and upon killing a cave spider, I got a lucky drop that made me immune to poison, which was always good to have. However, while that was lucky, my diamond luck was not so lucky. Despite finding a mine shaft at the perfect Y level, I found no diamonds yet. So I got back to strip mining, hoping to find a few diamonds before going back to the surface. Then, behind some iron, I finally found a diamond. 1 diamond. Clearly not enough to make anything, so I kept mining. I found a bunch of this lava stone stuff, which could have been really cool to build with, but I'm pretty sure I didn't end up using it, so I wasted a bunch of time mining a ton of it. In the cave, I found 2 more diamonds, but that was still not as many as I'd hoped to find. But then I found a vein of 8 diamonds and then a massive lava cavern. I was a little bit intimidated by the amount of lava because if I fell in that I would definitely die, but this place had more diamonds in it, so it was definitely worth it. I ended up fighting a few skeletons and a ton of these really annoying silverfish, but it was all worth it for the diamonds. There was this one really strong skeleton with a weird outfit, and upon taking it out, I got a hat that gave me more luck and more reach, which sounded amazing, so even though it had lower armor than iron, I put it on. I mined a few more diamonds, made a diamond pickaxe, and then I had a bit of an issue with these high tier enchanted mobs. There was no way I was going to be able to beat them with their regen and their damage reflect, so I just carefully dug some holes and I trapped them in them so I wouldn't have to deal with them. There was nothing really worthwhile behind them though, so I went back to the surface. And on the surface, I was completely lost. I had no idea where I was or where I was meant to be, and there were giant creepers that I did not want to deal with. It was not a fun time. I eventually made it back home and slept, and I'm pretty sure that I just barely saved myself from having to deal with a blood moon, so I'm glad that I got home when I did. Day 11, I made a diamond scythe for combat, and then I made a new special scythe, the roped scythe. The roped scythe lets me throw it, and it pulls me to wherever it hits. Also, if it hits a mob, it pulls the mob to me. This would be super good for getting around, hopefully. I then made a gold scythe and turned it into a boomerang scythe, which would basically give me a ranged weapon. However, when I threw it, it got stuck infinitely trying to fly back to me, and I could not break blocks or anything, so I had to get that fixed. Once it was fixed though, this was a very good ranged weapon. I began smelting some stone so I could begin building my house, and then a blood moon started. Honestly, there weren't really that many mobs spawning, but I couldn't sleep and I didn't really want to deal with hostile mobs right now, so I went underground and began collecting a ton of stone for my house. I mined stone through the entire night, and then when the chance of the blood moon was gone, I went back to the surface. It was now completely safe, beyond one creeper that I took out with my boomerang scythe. I then needed more coal to smelt the stone, so I went to mine that. While I was looking for coal, I used the rope scythe to pull a skeleton out into the sun, and then I took it out, and these special scythes could be very fun. I mined a ton of coal, and then I began smelting a bunch of stone, and then I realized I didn't quite have enough basalt for what I wanted to make, so I went back underground to mine some more. And I mined for the rest of day 12. Then, the next day, I got to work on my base. Now, I'm definitely not good at building on my own. I'm not gonna lie and say that I am, so I'm gonna be fully transparent. I borrowed this skull idea from a YouTube channel called Avocado. I will leave a link to their tutorial in the description. Be sure to check it out. It's very cool, it's very lit, and it turned into, I would say, one of the coolest bases I've ever had, so it's pretty lit. And by day 15, I had a very cool skull entrance and the walls to my home were done. Before I continued on my house, I wanted to get different colors of wood, so I wanted to explore. I set up a small potato farm and then I used my farming scythe to farm a ton of potatoes. And while those were cooking, I made some firework rockets and a diamond scythe. If I could get 4 feathers, I could use these to make a brand new type of scythe that could help me a lot with exploration. I waited for all the potatoes to cook and then I set out to explore. And at the end of day 16, I used my rope scythe to kill a few crows and I got 1 feather, so just 3 more to go. And then day 17, I threw my rope scythe at a seagull hoping to bring it to me, and the scythe just straight up disappeared. So yeah, I would need to get another one of those. I found this weird underwater village that had some free water buckets and fish and stuff, but nothing too valuable. I made another rope scythe, then I killed that seagull and got my last 2 feathers. I used 4 rockets, 4 feathers, and 1 diamond scythe to make the air scythe. This scythe allowed me to launch myself into the air with the ability key, and it would give me permanent slow fall, which would be amazing for traveling. Now that I had this, I set off to try and find some new biomes. At the end of day 17, I found a dark oak forest, which was a really cool kind of wood, but it was just not what I wanted right now. Then, just before nightfall, I saw a massive tower. Like, huge. But I definitely wanted better armor before taking on any dungeons, so I did not go inside. Day 18, I realized that the thing that I saw was definitely more than just 1 tower. It was a lot of towers. The Thornborn Towers, according to the achievement that I got. I definitely did not want to mess with this right now, but I would come back at a later date without a doubt. I found this weird fishing house with a zombie spawner in it, but the loot was pretty trash. I also found a ruined portal, which also had bad loot, and then I learned that it was guarded by an alligator, so I got out of there. Next, I found a massive skeleton structure in a Badlands biome. It was huge, and in it I found a chest with some diamonds and iron armor. And the boots were actually an upgrade, so that was pretty nice. I mined a bunch of red terracotta from that Badlands biome because just in case I couldn't find the wood that I wanted, I would use this instead. Day 19, I saw this airship. I used my air scythe to grab the ladder, and as I was exploring it, I get jumped by this crazy enchanted skeleton. It literally almost killed me, but I managed to get into the control room to heal up. I tried luring the skeleton down so I could drop it down and out of the ship easily, but I ended up nearly falling to my death instead. Luckily I had the air scythe, or I would have been a goner. I went back up, and after another fight that nearly killed me, I managed to drop the skeleton to its death. It did break my really cool extra reach hat in the process, so there goes that. I then went back to the skeleton room, broke the spawner, and took out all the weird skeletons, which dropped AoE potions of damage whenever they died, which was really dangerous and really annoying, and honestly, they were probably more dangerous than the enchanted one, not gonna lie. The next set of skeletons had flint and steels, and they spawned magma cubes on death, but those were not nearly as threatening. I killed a few more skeletons that dropped the potions when they died, and then I found this chest. In it, I found a gauntlet of dexterity. This let me swap items without resetting my attack cooldown, and whenever I have a bunch of different really good combat sites, that would be amazing. And it also boosted my attack speed by a decent amount, so even without swapping, it was incredible. This airship was definitely worth the risk. I broke 1 last spawner, looted 1 last chest, and the airship was cleared. It was a random little detour from the biome hunt, but it was easily worth the time. Day 20, I found these cool emu eggs, and I got attacked by this crazy lizard, and then I found a Badlands village. The village itself didn't have very much, but right next to it was the most bizarre looking dungeon I've ever seen in my entire life. I got closer, and apparently these were the Bandit Towers. Just look at these things, bro, they're crazy and huge. I was checking it out to see how realistic it would be to take it on, and then an illager shot me with a firework for a quarter of my HP, and I decided that this was not something I was dealing with right now. I found a boat with a buried treasure map in it, and I figured that the map would be a very good next destination, so I followed it. I arrived at the chest at the end of day 20 and I had some gold, diamonds, iron, the normal loot. Nothing crazy, but I could always use more diamonds. Day 21, I just sailed for the entire day. I eventually found land towards the end of the day, but still no sign of the biome that I wanted. Day 22, I found a massive tower, which of course I am not ready to take on yet. I did see a lava pool right next to it, however, so I took the opportunity to get some obsidian for an enchantment table. I was over level 30 by this point, and I could really use some enchantments. Then, near the end of day 22, I remembered that I could make the Nature's Compass, which could point me to any biome that I wanted. So, yeah, I could have found the biome that I wanted a lot faster. Regardless, I made the compass and I began tracking a Blossom Woods. I arrived at the Blossom Woods on day 23, and this biome had tons of this cherry wood. The wood was bright red, and it was exactly what I wanted to finish my house. I spent most of the rest of day 23 gathering a bunch of cherry wood, and then I began my journey back home. I then quickly stepped into a dungeon in hopes of finding a recall potion to make it faster, but my armor was not ready for that place, so I would just walk instead. And day 24 was basically just a bunch of traveling, nothing really interesting happened, so nothing to really talk about there. Day 25 was also just traveling, however, night 25 I killed an ice illager that gave me a wand of freezing. It could put icicles above mobs' heads that would fall down and damage and freeze them. It was not one of my scythes though, so I would probably not use it, but it was pretty cool. Get it? Cool? Cause it's ice? No? Okay. I got home on night 25, and in the chat it mentioned another blood moon, and last time that happened it meant that the next night would be a blood moon, so I definitely wanted to get the house secured by then. And now that I was home with the cherry wood, I got to work on the floor and roof. There was a blood moon that night while I was working on the roof, which did end up causing my game to crash, but beyond that, nothing serious happened. After the roof and floor were done, I fought off the blood moon mobs for the rest of night 26. I spent day 27 organizing all my items, and then I gathered a bunch of sand because I realized that this place could definitely use some natural lighting. Day 28, I organized the items from my backpack, smelted my glass, and then I added windows to my base. I now had better lighting inside and a decently cool looking base. Day 29, I was nearly prepared to fight my first custom boss. I wanted to enchant first, and then I was ready. I had no books though, so I had to either find a village with bookshelves or a lot of leather. While hunting animals and looking for a village, I ended up finding a blossom forest biome, literally like 200 or less blocks from my house. Meaning if I just chose a different direction when I was looking for it before, I would have been done way faster. But that didn't happen. That night I dipped into a dungeon to see if it maybe had some bookshelves. It did not have any bookshelves, but it did have some diamonds and other resources, as well as a monastery explorer map, and that was probably a dungeon, so I would worry about it later. Later that night, I found a house in a plains biome that actually had some bookshelves. I got 24 books out of it, which was not quite enough, but it was a good start. By day 30, I had enough leather and almost enough sugarcane to make the rest of my books. I found a desert temple with a ton of trash loot in it, another weird like fishing zombie shack, and a village. The village did not have any books or anything, but right near it was the rest of the sugarcane that I needed. I gathered it all and then I began heading back home. And on the way home, I found what I thought was a dungeon, but it was actually some kind of like village building. It had a map in it that would lead to an infested temple, but most importantly, it had a ton of bookshelves, so now I had plenty of books to spare. I arrived home on day 31, I made my bookshelves, and I set up my enchantment table. I then used most of my levels to enchant some gear. I made a diamond chestplate and I enchanted it and got protection 3. I also got sharpness 2 and knockback and fire aspect on a diamond scythe. My other gear didn't get great enchantments, but I enchanted whatever I could just so I could be as strong as possible. I also got a sharpness 2 book during that, so I combined it with my diamond scythe to get sharpness 3. Now, I was mostly geared for the first boss. The only thing that I wanted to do on day 32 was golden apples. And I ended up spending the whole day just harvesting oak trees and collecting apples, and by the end of the day I had 12 golden apples, which was not a lot, but it would probably get me through this fight. The last thing that I did on day 32 was enchant new iron leggings with blast protection because I figured that it might be better than fire protection against this boss. Since this boss is custom, I knew the exact coordinates of where the arena was, so I made my way towards it. Once I reached the coordinates, I dug down, and there I was in the Nightmare Pegasus Arena. The spawner was in the center, and the second that I approached, the boss fight began. I hit it, and it immediately attacked back, giving me the wither effect. I ate a golden apple, and I kept attacking the Pegasus, but every time my absorption wore off, I started taking a ton of damage, so I had to keep eating golden apples just to survive. This boss had a ton of range on the attacks, and this wither effect was not helping at all. I started using my boomerang scythe to deal damage from a safer distance, and then once below half HP, the Nightmare Pegasus began summoning meteorites that dealt a ton of damage and also gave even more wither effect. I had to eat a golden apple to survive the meteor shower, and then once it ended, I went back to attacking the Pegasus with my diamond scythe. Without the golden apples, I would have been dead for sure, but thanks to them, I was able to continuously attack the boss. After a few more golden apples and a lot of attacks, I finally defeated the Nightmare Pegasus. It dropped a trophy as well as a Nightmare Wing, which could be used to make a special scythe later on. With my first boss defeated, I dug back to the surface and headed back home. When I got home that night, I placed down my Nightmare Pegasus trophy. It only faced one direction apparently, so I put it next to my door. This boss looked amazing whenever it wasn't trying to, murder me. To make the Nightmare Scythe, I would first need a netherite scythe, meaning I had to go to the nether. I was not a fan of the nether, and I usually like to get some kind of fire resistance before going there. And I have a scythe that can give me that, but it requires blaze rods. I saw that I could get blaze rods from a hunter villager, so I went to find a village in hopes of finding one. But then I saw that I could make a hunting post item, and that gave me a fantastic plan. I made a hunting post, and then I went to find an igloo. I found a dirt igloo conveniently inside of another village. I went down the ladder and I began converting the zombie villager. I placed down my hunting post and I waited for him to convert to a normal villager. Then, once converted, he offered way cheaper trades because I converted him from a zombie. So I went up to the surface to hunt bones and stuff to hopefully level him up. I ended up not really getting many bones, so on day 35 I chose to trade with the villagers in the village to get more emeralds. I spent the whole day just farming wheat and potatoes for emeralds and then trading them to a hunter villager to unlock more trades. That night I unlocked the blaze rod trade for 1 emerald, and I was able to get 11 blaze rods, which would be way more than enough. I got home on day 36 to make the scythe, and then I realized that I would need more diamonds to make it, so I went over to a dungeon near my house. I took out the invisible skeletons and then I looted the chests. I got the diamonds that I needed and some free apples, which would be really good for golden apples later on. I then headed home and then I made the fire scythe. This scythe would let me shoot an explosive fireball, it gave me free fire aspect, and it would give me fire resistance whenever I held it. This would help a lot in the nether. I enchanted it with sharpness 2 and now I was ready for the nether. Day 37, I went and mined some obsidian from a ruined portal, and then back home I made my nether portal. Before I went in though, I wanted to get more obsidian so I could make a portal to get out of the nether, so I went to find more. I mined a bunch of obsidian that night, and then on day 38 I went to the nether. My nether spawn was super open, which was amazing. I saw these weird piglins that started trying to throw potions at me. None of them ever hit me, but I would like to avoid them if possible. I went ahead and made a gold helmet so piglins wouldn't attack me on sight, and then I got to looking for a nether fortress. I needed a nether star for one of the best scythes in the game, so I had to farm wither skeletons. The Crimson Forest was full of these giant crimson mosquitoes, and yeah, nightmare fuel is correct. I would avoid the biome at all costs. I found a soul sand biome and I ended up killing a few wither skeletons. Every skeleton dropped a skull shard guaranteed, and 9 of those would make a wither skull, so with this biome combined with my villager, I would never need a nether fortress. Actually, I was wrong about that. I do need it for nether wart later on, but don't worry about that. While I was farming the skeletons, I ended up getting attacked by these ugly basalt golem dudes, and between those and the skeletons, I definitely almost died. I fell into lava without the fire scythe equipped, and I had to keep swapping between the air scythe and the fire scythe to avoid dying to either fall damage or fire damage. It was stressful, but I made it out okay. I farmed skeletons for a bit more, and then one of them ended up dropping an entire skull, so now I had all that I needed for the wither. I went back to my portal and I headed home. Day 39, my goal was to get better armor. I've had way too many close calls, and it was clear that iron armor just ain't cutting it. I decided to just go strip mining because I still was not confident in taking on any dungeons. I mined for the next day and a half, and I would have probably kept going, but my pickaxe was almost broken and I was out of food, so I went back home. I had enough diamonds to finish my diamond armor set, and I was lucky and able to enchant it all with protection too. I spent the rest of day 40 smelting the gold that I mined, and I made as many golden apples as I could. I was now a lot more confident in my ability to take on the Wither. The next day, I went off into an isolated spot and I summoned the Wither. And I should not have been confident in my abilities at all. The Wither was out of reach for me to hit it, and it healed way too fast for me to weaken it with my boomerang scythe. And I also couldn't pull it to me with the rope scythe. I tried to retreat, but the Wither just would not let up. My boomerang scythe could not even come close to getting it to half HP. I realized that I had no chance of beating it, and I ended up using all of my golden apples just to survive. I ended up falling down a hole and taking a ton of fall damage, but I barely managed to survive the Wither effect. And I heard the Wither trying to get down to me, so I tunneled away and escaped. So, yeah, that was not a good idea. I would go back to that after I got better armor because I had a plan that might be able to beat it. Day 42, I wanted to prepare to fight that Wither. I wanted to get better enchantments on armor and also brew some healing potions. I decided that I wanted to go back to the Nether and try and find Nether wart because I desperately needed the healing potions before I did any dungeons or any bosses. Before heading to the Nether, I cooked some potatoes for extra food and then I went in. And have I ever mentioned that I hate the Nether? Because, yeah, I hate the Nether. There were those giant mosquitoes and there were some crazy netherrack piglins. I did not feel safe at all. However, after a bit I found a fortress, so hopefully I wouldn't have to be in the Nether for too long. It didn't take much time until I was able to get my Nether wart, but I wanted to explore the fortress a bit more. I ended up looting a chest that gave me a broken heart item. This would cause damage that would normally kill me to instead break empty heart containers, and I did consider not using it, but I then realized that I would rather not die, so I just put it on. After a bit, I made a portal and went back to the overworld to find that I was thousands of blocks away from my home. I really did not want to travel through the Nether though, so I got the walk-in. I spent the entirety of day 43 traveling home, and then that night, as soon as I got home, a blood moon started. I wouldn't be able to sleep now, so I decided to take that night to make some potions. Through that night, as well as all of day 44, I brewed a ton of potions. I had recall potions, as well as potions of healing and night vision. And I also made a purple backpack just for potions because they took up a lot of space. Night 44, after all of my potions were brewed, I also made the Witch's Scythe. This scythe's ability threw a random negative splash potion. This would probably be very bad against any undead mobs, but it would be very good for bosses. Day 45, I had one more type of potion that I wanted to make. I went into a ravine and grabbed these cave roots, and then I used them to make potions of fortitude. With my potions made, I was almost ready for the Wither again, but I wanted more golden apples, so I wanted to go to the Badlands biome from before. I knew the general direction, but that was about it, so I headed up to try and find it the next day. And I arrived in the Badlands on night 46, and I began looking for caves and mining any gold that I could find. Then, while underground, I heard what sounded like a boss spawning sound. I then randomly took a bunch of damage out of nowhere, and I did not want to randomly die to literally nothing. I eventually saw this weird skeleton looking thing on the upper level, and after running around a bit more, I went up there and it spawned a bunch of skeletons and these wraith things that put blue fire everywhere. I ran off and took out the wraiths chasing me, and then I went back and drank a potion of night vision and a potion of resistance. I ran in and knocked the necromancer mob into a ravine, and then I beelined for it, ignoring all of the other undead. I actually managed to take it out pretty easily, so the potions were probably a bit overkill, and not only were they overkill, but they also just weren't worth it because the drops burned in fire, so I have no idea what I would have even gotten, so that's sick. Then, after that, I just mined gold for a while more. I found a dungeon too, which was like terracotta theme, which was super cool. It gave me a Vitae enchanted book and a looting ancient tome and some other random stuff. I mined for the rest of that day, and then I recall potioned home. Day 48, I started smelting my gold, and then I spent the entire day collecting apples. By that night, I had a whole 9 apples. Not a ton, but it should be enough to beat the Wither. Day 49, I was ready. I made a second roped scythe just in case mine got blown up or something, and now it was time to deal with that Wither. I had my fortitude potion, my health potions, and my golden apples, and hopefully that would be enough to allow me to win. Then I arrived back at where I left the Wither. I drank my resistance potion and I went in. I heard explosions and I saw the Wither down in the cave where I fell into before. I threw my boomerang scythe to aggro it and then it came up. I was able to get a lot of damage off while it was stuck underground, but eventually it broke through and flew above me. So, if I played it right, I was able to use my rope scythe to pull the Wither just close enough to let me hit it with my other attacks. And doing this, I whittled it down over and over and over. My rope scythes occasionally got lost or blown away. They would come back eventually, but having 2 made it so I could get consistent damage off, preventing it from regenning. I had to use a lot of golden apples and healing potions, but eventually I got the Wither down to half HP into the second phase. I just started going in with my diamond scythe, and I had to heal to avoid dying to the constant damage, but after a bit longer, I managed to defeat the Wither. That was the absolute hardest Wither fight I've ever had in my entire life, but it was beaten and I had my Nether Star. I went home, made a diamond scythe, and then I combined it with the Nether Star to make a Wither scythe. This was easily one of the best scythes in the game. It could fire Wither Skulls, which gave enemies Wither 2 and dealt a lot of damage. And it also had Lifesteal. Lifesteal is one of the strongest things that I can have access to without a doubt. Now I just needed to enchant the scythe. I ended up using all of my experience to try and reset the enchantment table to see sharpness 4 on the scythe, and in the end I just put sharpness 1 on it and I would use books to get it higher. I went ahead and upgraded it to sharpness 2, and I actually had enough books for sharpness 4, but I would need way more experience. Day 50, I decided to go to the Nether for experience. I also needed a ton of netherite, so mining in the Nether was something I had to do eventually anyways. In the Nether, I dug down to Y15 and I got to strip mining. I mined for a while, and I used a lot of iron pickaxes, but I ended up giving up with 0 ancient debris found. I needed a better pickaxe for sure before I tried this, so I just went home. Back home, I got my Wither Scythe up to sharpness 3, but I would need 10 levels to get sharpness 4. So I went back to the Nether, I mined a bit more quartz, and now I had a sharpness 4 Wither Scythe. This was by far my best scythe for combat, so my diamond scythe was just not needed anymore. Day 52, my main goals were to get more diamonds for armor and a lot of TNT for netherite mining. I know the airship dungeon from before had TNT in it, so I wanted to find more of those. Before I headed out, I made some healing potions just in case I needed them. Once I had a bunch of those, I went out to find more dungeons for diamonds and TNT. That day I found a giant mushroom which had these weird slime skeletons. The chest had a lot of coal, but that was basically it. I also chose to replace my diamond helmet and chestplate with iron because I figured that I could maybe repair them in the future. I looted a nearby dungeon with invisible chainmail guys and got 4 diamonds, not a lot, but good enough. While taking on that dungeon, I did learn that the Wither Scythe's lifesteal was not really working right now, so while I was waiting for that to be fixed, I would try to avoid too many fights. The next day I took on another dungeon full of invisible skeletons. I loved these things because they could sometimes have diamonds and they always had free apples, meaning I could make golden apples later without having to grind oak trees for an entire day. Just as I was leaving that dungeon, I spotted an airship and a snow temple. And the snow temple didn't really go very well. This temple was designed by an absolute monster, and the pressure plate was on the side, not the center. I walked right into the trap and took a ton of damage from TNT, leaving me on half a heart. I paused the game thinking it was all over, but luckily the rest of the TNT blew up below me, so I barely managed to survive. At least I knew where the trap was for the future though, right? Yeah. I looted the airship next, and there was no TNT at all. I could have sworn that I got TNT from these before, but this time there was nothing, so that kinda sucks, not gonna lie. Towards the end of that night, I decided to try and take on an Illager pirate ship. Their arrows did a lot of damage, but using my air scythe I was able to retreat and heal whenever I got low. I dealt with most of the Illagers on the surface into the morning. Then these Vindicators with axes came from below, and they did tons of damage. And while I was fighting one, it shattered my boots and 3 of my heart containers, meaning I would have died just now. Yeah, I'm very glad that I got that broken heart before. Literally saved my life. I made some iron boots, and then when I went back up, a ton of Vindicators came from below. And I'm very glad that I had the Wither Scythe, because even though I didn't have lifesteal, I was able to attack from range, taking them all out. I looked inside the boat and I saw a spawner, and I destroyed it with the Wither Skull and probably broke some chests in the process, but I don't even care. I don't want to deal with any more Vindicators. They are way too strong. I went in and picked up the loot, which was basically just a blast protection chestplate, so overall the ship was definitely not worth the risk, but I survived, so that was good enough for me. There was another boat nearby that looked like even more of a threat, and I was not gonna deal with that right now. The next morning, I found a desert temple. I got the 9 TNT, and then in the chest, I got an Ender Mending 3 book. This was one of the best enchanted books that I could find. I just had no idea what I would use it on yet. At this point, I got the fix for the Wither-sized lifesteal. I just didn't have the armor necessary to actually make use of that lifesteal. I really wanted more experience so I could try and get a Fortune 3 pickaxe for diamonds, so I wanted to try and find a dungeon with an easily farmable spawner. I found another small illager ship, and with my lifesteal, I was able to easily handle all of the crossbow illagers. And I actually got diamonds from this ship, so it was very worth it. The Vindicators were still insanely strong, but I could at least survive now. I tried to farm their spawner for EXP, but they did not spawn nearly often enough, so I just broke it instead. I looted another one of those small ships the next day, and I got tons of iron and gold, but no diamonds. I then looted a desert temple that I found for a bit more TNT, and then I recall potioned back to spawn. I made my way home, and then I decided that I had enough TNT to try and get some netherite. I read online that the best way to get netherite was to go down to Y13, dig a tunnel, and then place a ton of TNT. So I went back to my old tunnel, dug a new one along a chunk border at Y13, and then I placed a ton of TNT and lit it. And I don't know if I did something wrong, but there was not a single piece of ancient debris in the entire tunnel. So yeah, I got 0. Then I used my last 9 TNT in another tunnel, and I ended up finding 1 piece of ancient debris. I probably got super unlucky, or maybe I just did something wrong, I'm not really sure, but I now needed a lot more TNT. I then headed back home with my 1 piece of ancient debris. Now my goal was to get a good pickaxe. I enchanted 1 book to reset the table, and I immediately saw Fortune 3, which was exactly what I wanted. I went back to the Nether, got a bit more experience, and then I came home and enchanted a brand new pickaxe. It only got Fortune 3 and Death's Odium, but Fortune 3 was perfect and Death's Odium didn't really matter, so I'll take it. Day 58, I wanted to go diamond mining. With Fortune 3, I might now finally be able to get a full set of diamond armor that actually lasts longer than like 3 days. Mining would also give me a lot of experience for more enchantments. I went a bit away from my base so I could find new caves, and then I got to mining. And I mined a lot, like for 2 days, and I ended up with 57 diamonds. The next day I had 30 levels, so I enchanted some boots and I got Protection 3 and Depth Strider 3. I then went to the Nether, I got more experience, and enchanted a helmet with Protection 4, a book with Feather Falling 3, and diamond leggings with Unbreaking 3. I then decided to put the Ender Mending book from before on my pickaxe because it was definitely the most important thing to put it on. And then on day 61, I went back to the Nether to mine a ton of quartz again. It took forever for the pickaxe to fully repair itself, and then once it repaired itself, I had to fill the internal experience storage, and then once that was full, I could now use this basically unbreakable pickaxe to mine for experience. I was mining quartz for ages, and then I shot a fireball that hit a zombie piglin, and as I was running away from all the angry piglins, there was a mutant wither skeleton. I was not really interested in fighting that at all, so I ran away. While I was mining, I found this piglin tower. I lured all the piglins over near some lava, and then after they all burned to death, I ran in to loot the tower. It didn't have much, but it did have 1 free netherite scrap. I would need a lot more, but that was progress. I mined quartz until I was level 34, and then in this weird nether temple that I found, I got a magic mirror. No netherite, but a magic mirror was basically an infinite recall potion, so I'll take it. After that, I was very tired of being in the Nether, so I made a portal and went home. Back home, I enchanted a diamond pick with efficiency 4 and then diamond pants with swift 2 and protection 4. I combined those pants with the unbreaking 3 ones from before, and then I added efficiency 4 to my mending pickaxe. I was really close to a perfect set of armor, but now I really wanted that netherite. I needed it for a better scythe and better armor, and once I had that, I would be ready to fight the second boss. The next morning, I gathered sand and I made 10 TNT, and then I went to the Nether for netherite. I used my 10 TNT on part of the old tunnel, and I actually found 2 pieces of netherite, meaning I now had enough for 1 netherite ingot. I then started tunneling with my new pickaxe, and pretty quickly I found a vein of 3 more pieces. I mined like this for a while more, and I got a bit of netherite. Not a ton, but I got up to 11 total, counting the ones that I had back home. My pickaxe was nearly broken though, so I portaled home. It was night 65 when I got home, and then I smelted my netherite. I then used my old diamond scythe to make a netherite scythe, and then I combined it with the nightmare wing to make the nightmare scythe. This scythe was first of all just as strong as netherite, making it the strongest one that I've had so far, and it had an ability to drop a meteorite from the sky, which gave wither and lit enemies on fire. This was without a doubt my strongest scythe. I just barely had any hotbar space for all the scythes that I have, and I wanted to use all of them. It's kind of a good problem to have, but still. I did want to enchant the nightmare scythe before using it, so I wouldn't use it for now. I spent that night farming mobs for experience, and then the next morning I repaired my pickaxe. The last things that I wanted to do before my next boss were enchant the nightmare scythe and get a good chestplate, which of course means back to the Nether for experience. Yeah. I normally would do dungeons for experience, but I really don't want to lose durability on my armor because then I just need more experience to repair it, so Nether quartz was my best bet. I'm not going to bore you with too many of the details from the quartz mining, but there were these bears that kept jumping down from the ceiling, and they kept jump scaring me and attacking me every now and then, and now I hated the Nether even more, which I didn't even know was possible, but apparently it is. I got to level 34 and then I went back home. The next day I enchanted my nightmare scythe with sharpness 4, range 4, and fire aspect 2. It was basically perfect. I literally could not ask for much more. I then enchanted 2 books, and then I saw protection 4 on a chestplate, and I needed that, so I went back to the Nether again for 1 more level. Then I went back home and I enchanted the chestplate, and it was insane. It had Vitae 3, which is just extra health, as well as Unbreaking 3 and Protection 4. It also had a curse that would damage passive mobs near me, but honestly, I don't really care about that because I don't have any pets anyways, so not really a big deal. Then I used 2 Unbreaking books that I had to add Unbreaking 2 to my pickaxe. Finally, I upgraded my chestplate to netherite, and now I was equipped for the second boss. Day 69, it was finally time for the next boss. I immediately set out for the arena. I traveled for a while, and then eventually I reached the coordinates. I dug down, and there was the Thunder Slime arena. I immediately drank resistance and night vision potions, and then I approached the spawner. The Thunder Slime boss spawned, and I threw a splash potion at it with my witch scythe. I tried to use my meteorites, which did not seem to work underground, which does make sense, but I was kinda hopeful. I also forgot to put golden apples on my hotbar, so I started taking way more damage than I wanted to. I attacked the slime a ton with my nightmare scythe, and occasionally I used my wither skull and my fireball to deal extra damage. Lightning was striking down everywhere, but between my wither skulls and my potions of poison from the witch scythe, I was whittling down the thunder slime a lot. Then, at half HP, the thunder slime began flying around and levitating all weird, and then it summoned 2 thunder slime minions. These things were super hard to hit, and they were really fast, and they just made it even harder to survive against the boss that was already really fast and hard to get away from. My wither skulls and fireballs helped me deal damage from a safer distance, and then the slowness potions from the witch scythe helped me keep that safe distance. By the time that I killed one of the minions, the thunder slime was almost dead. However, I then realized that my wither skulls were putting holes in the floor, and those led straight to the void. I lured the boss and the remaining slime minion away from the fire in the void, and then I took out the minion, and then finally, I defeated the thunder slime boss. It dropped a trophy as well as a thunder slime ball, which I could use for a very lit scythe whenever I got enough netherite. My armor's durability did not appreciate that fight at all, but now I only had one boss left. The next morning, I placed down the 2 trophies that I got from that boss. I'm not entirely sure why I got 2, but I'll take it because now I can make it symmetrical. And now I needed netherite. The only thing that I really wanted before I fought the next boss was more netherite. I went back to my tunnel and I got back to digging. My hope was that the Unbreaking 2 enchantment would let me mine for a lot longer, and oh yeah, it definitely did. I mined for literal hours to find all the netherite that I needed. I found a few nether mine shafts, which were really cool, but they didn't really help with getting netherite, so not the best. However, they did have plenty of quartz to repair my pickaxe, so they were definitely worth it. And then after a few days, once the mining was done, I portaled home and began smelting the ancient debris. The next morning, I upgraded the rest of my diamond armor to netherite, but it does not stop there. I put the netherite armor into the smithing table with another netherite ingot one more time, and I got a full set of REAPER armor. This armor was even better than netherite, and it looked incredible, though my eyes didn't really fit in the helmet, but it looks great regardless. Then I made a netherite scythe and I combined it with my thunder slime to make the thunder scythe. This scythe gave me speed 2 whenever I held it, and the ability allowed me to summon a lightning storm wherever I was looking. I used this to burn down the nearby dungeon because why not? I also remembered that this scythe has a 2.5 attack speed, meaning I could attack insanely fast, which meant that this was by far the best combat scythe, meaning I had to get it enchanted. Which of course means back to the Nether for more experience! I promise you I have never spent this much time in the Nether in any Minecraft world, but dungeons were dangerous and scary, and I wanted experience, so this was my only option. I mined quartz until I reached level 30, and then I saw this Nether temple. I went in, killed the hoglin that was guarding it, and then I saw that the chest was trapped, so I broke all the TNT under it and looted the gold from inside. Then I realized that the temple just conveniently had a fully built nether portal inside, so I portaled to the overworld and I went home. I enchanted the thunder scythe with sharpness 4 and knockback 2, and this would now be my new main scythe. And honestly, I didn't really need the nightmare scythe anymore because the meteorite couldn't be used underground or in buildings anyways, so I would not use that one from here on out. Next, I farmed some potatoes so I would have food for my travels, and now I wanted to try and take on some dungeons. I was incredibly well equipped and I had plenty of time before I had to fight my next boss, so I might as well see what these crazy dungeons have to offer. The next day, I got to traveling to find a dungeon. And I learned that I could put the thunder scythe in my offhand and the air scythe in my main hand, and I would be able to have slow fall and speed boost, and I would still be able to launch into the air. So this would be amazing for traveling. Day 78, I found an illager campsite, and using my scythes, I was able to run around destroying the place. I used my thunder scythe to strike massive groups of illagers with lightning, and the speed boost allowed me to run around taking all of them out. The wither scythe skulls were able to deal a lot of damage from range as well, and after a bit, I cleared all of the illagers at the campsite. They did do a number on my armor though, so I was a little worried as to how I was going to handle that. And that night ended up being a blood moon, so now I had to travel through a ton of super annoying mobs looking for dungeons. At this point, I had decided that my goal was to find more desert temples because they had a high chance of giving me mending books, and that would definitely save my armor. That night, I saw what looked like either a dungeon or a village, but I didn't really want to go near it during a blood moon, so I waited until morning. Then the next morning, I investigated the structure, and it turns out it was both a village and a dungeon. It was a village of these hostile mushroom people that rode on top of cows and stuff. They weren't really threats like whatsoever, and the loot was sort of okay, but overall, nothing that I could really use here. I took on a few other random dungeons that day, and I found 0 mending books. Then, later that day, I found this insane tower dungeon again. I wanted to try and beat it this time because I was way better geared than before. However, it was becoming nighttime, which could only make the dungeon harder, so I waited for nighttime and I slept. I used my air scythe to leap up the tower, and I broke a spawner as soon as possible. These skeleton-ridden phantoms were not really fun to deal with, but I managed to at least survive them and open a chest. And the chests did seem to have enchanted books, meaning I could have a chance of getting mending out of this. After a lot of trying to fight these insane mobs, I decided that my new strat was to just break the spawners and then run away and make all the mobs despawn. It would save my armor's durability, which I wanted to do because I did not want to have to mine for more netherite. And out of that entire pain of a dungeon, I got a Protection 3 book, and everything else was useless to me. Not great, but oh well. And at this point, I was convinced that I was totally going to have to mine more netherite to repair my gear, and I was not looking forward to it. Day 81, the literal entire day was just constantly traveling in hopes of finding a desert, and then on day 82, I actually found a desert, but it did not have a single temple. Instead, I found a mansion, a desert mansion. It was literally a woodland mansion just in the desert. And I kinda had high hopes for this. I drank a night vision potion and I went in. I have never looted a woodland mansion in my entire life, so I had no idea where any of the loot was. I checked the entire first floor and some of the chests had okay loot, but nothing really good. I ended up killing 2 evokers and I got 2 totems of undying, and then I get swarmed by a ton of vexes and vindicators and everything, so I just ran away and fireballed my way out of a window and escaped. I doubt there was a mending book in there anyways, and my armor was kinda taking way too much damage for it to be worth it, so I'll just find it some other way. And then I just continued my search for desert temples. I found a few, but none of them really had mending books, and I was getting very tired of searching. By day 86, I had found 0 mending books, and I really wanted to try a different approach. I went home and made lecterns, and I was going to see if I could get a librarian to trade me a mending book. I tried giving the job to a villager in a nearby village, but for some reason that wasn't working. I don't really know why, but because that was not working, the next day I went all the way back to the dirt igloo from day 1. Yeah, the villager that I converted forever ago was finally gonna be useful. Because I converted them from a zombie, they offered cheaper trades for books. So I just reset their trades with a lectern over and over. It took like 20 minutes of constantly doing this, but eventually I found a trade that gave mending books for 5 emeralds. I grabbed 6 mending books and I only really needed 4, but I figured more is better than less. Day 88, I enchanted a few books with level 30 so I wouldn't waste the levels, and then I got nothing good. And then I added mending to all of my armor. I held my ender mending pickaxe, and after a few seconds, it used all the charges to repair my armor. However, I wanted to get it fully repaired, so of course, it's back to the nether for more experience. Though it didn't really take that long to get it fully repaired, so it wasn't that much mining. And I didn't get it all the way repaired, but it was close enough. The morning of day 89, there was a group of pillagers just sorta chillin'. They had helmets and stuff, and one of them did have a banner. I got closer and they all go to attack me, and then I strike lightning and start taking all of them out. And then my game crashed. Not really sure what I did wrong, but the game did not like me fighting them at all. And when I loaded back in, it was before I had even fought them, so I just took them out from a safe distance with like wither skulls and potions and stuff to avoid crashing. And now I was ready for the final boss. This one was incredibly far out, so I got to traveling. I traveled to my destination until the end of day 90, and I wasted a bit of time on like an irrelevant dungeon. Not really sure why I bothered. I knew the loot would be pretty useless, but I figured why not. And then when I got to where I was going, I realized that I went the wrong way. Because of how these boss arenas generate, they cannot be spawned under an ocean, and I was in the middle of an ocean. So what had happened was I needed to go to X5000Z0. Instead, I went to X0Z5000, meaning I was nowhere near the boss arena. So I teleported home and traveled to where I was actually supposed to go. While heading towards the arena, I hit this airship with lightning because why not, and then right next to it I saw a glare. Like the mob that lost the last Minecraft though, you know that guy? I didn't really expect to see one just floating in the sky. I also didn't even know I had a mod installed that added those, but it was cool to see. I didn't really know I could do anything with it, so I just continued on my way. By the middle of day 92, I arrived at the correct coordinates. I dug down and soon I was in the boss arena. I drank my night vision and resistance, and then I readied my healing potions and my golden apples, and then I went in. The elemental golem spawned and I got off a hit with my thunder scythe. Then the golem sends me flying with an earthquake and begins firing insanely strong fireballs at me. I eat a golden apple so I can survive because the damage output of this thing was crazy. I approach for another hit and then the golem fires a barrage of snowballs, spawning snow golem minions to help it. It kept spawning snow golems and I hit the elemental golem over and over to get off as much damage as possible. It hit me with another earthquake followed by fireballs and lightning attacks, and then once again, when I approached, I was barraged with snowballs and snow golems. It was really hard for me to get in close to this thing and deal damage, but it apparently had no problem dealing a ton of damage to me. Occasionally, its earthquake would kill its own snow golem minions, which helped me a lot because I would not have to deal with them. And I also learned how to dodge the earthquake most of the time, which gave me an opening for more attacks. However, if I ever got hit by it, I was barraged with more fireballs and lightning, so it was super risky. When getting near half HP, the boss summoned a ton of snow golems, and then I saw it accidentally strike them with lightning. And that gave me an idea. I backed off and I used my Thunder Scythe's ability to obliterate all of the snow golem minions. And then I got off a few more hits, bringing the elemental golem to phase 2. Now, during the second phase, the elemental golem was able to move. It would run after me and then use the earthquake to send me flying and then follow up with fireballs and lightning attacks. This made it super hard to stay close and getting off hits was incredibly dangerous. I began throwing potions with the witch scythe hoping for like a poison or slowness to make it easier. And every time that I got close I would just get launched away, but I was slowly but surely whittling down the golem's HP. After a lot of back and forth, the boss only had one hit left. I waited for it to be away from fire, and then I went in for the final hit, defeating the elemental golem. I ended up getting launched away after the last hit, but regardless, the golem was defeated. I got a trophy and the elemental crystal. I headed home and I placed down the trophy. An absolutely incredible looking boss. Next, I made a netherite scythe, and then I used that to create the elemental scythe. This scythe, whenever I held it, gave me regeneration 3, strength 3, speed 3, jump boost 3, and resistance 3. It would also allow me to use the elemental golem's earthquake attack, which dealt a ton of knockback and damage. Now obviously this was not enchanted and it was a lot slower than the thunder scythe. So I would use this in my offhand to gain the buffs, then swap to it for the earthquake attack while using the thunder scythe as my main weapon. I was now incredibly powerful. Day 93, I wanted to repair my armor. It took a beating from that boss fight and I wanted to repair it for what came next. I went to the Nether one last time and mined a ton of quartz until my armor was fully repaired. When I got back home, I spent some time thinking about what I wanted to do last, and I decided that I would take on the infested temple that I had a map for. I grabbed the map and on day 94, I set out for the infested temple. On the way there, I passed by one of the horrible tower dungeons that I hated, and I instantly struck it with lightning to burn it down. Screw that dungeon, never again. Then I got very sidetracked. I found this dungeon called the Foundry. It had piglin brutes in it with netherite armor, and that told me that it was probably a super strong dungeon. I cleared a bunch of piglins and looted the chests and made my way through. In the center, there was a circle of blackstone. I mined it, and under it was a massive mess of a structure. I was going to go down there as soon as I cleared the rest for sure. I made my way through all the hallways, breaking spawners and taking out the piglins. They dropped netherite gear, which would have been fantastic before, but I just didn't really need it now. After clearing all of that, I went down to the next level, and it was just chaos. Instantly, 3 mutant blazes spawn at once. I did not want to deal with those, so I ran away and ran by tons of other blaze spawners, followed by a spawner that spawned massive magma cubes. I actually took damage at one point through all my buffs, and that was not a good sign. I ran off into a bit of a safer spot so I could focus on less enemies at one time. I was able to clear magma cubes pretty easily with the earthquake ability, and then I ran in for the blazes. I took out the blaze spawner, killed the blazes, and then I looted the chest, which had tons of netherite. I never thought that there would be an overworld dungeon with all of this, but there was, and I'm kinda mad that I didn't find it earlier. Not that I probably would have survived it earlier, but still. I cleared the next blaze area, and after that I remembered that I could use my wither scythe to destroy spawners from a distance, which would save me a lot of problems. I then fought a Forge Sentry Wither Skeleton which had enchanted netherite gear. This dungeon was absolutely no joke, and it was way more interesting than the infested temple. Then, while I was deciding which direction to go next, 2 more mutant blazes spawned. I was getting tossed around and absorbed, and quite frankly I had no idea what was going on. It was just chaos. I apparently managed to kill one of them because I got the achievement for it, but honestly, I couldn't even tell. It was just that crazy. Then, after a lot more chaos, I took out the other one. It gave me a mutant blaze core, which would be a fantastic trophy if I could make it out of here alive. I went down the other side path, and there were tons of these wither skeleton sentries riding hoglins and phantoms. I prioritized breaking the spawners, and then I began fighting all of them off. And I was in a very good spot because of the scythe buffs and the mending armor. I rarely took a lot of damage, and my armor was full durability the whole time. However, if the dungeon tried hard enough, it could definitely still kill me. After that side path was completely clear, I made my way down the main hallway past this giant door. And there was nothing. Just a closed door, which was the end of the dungeon, and apparently there was nothing in there. And that is when I realized that the giant lava lake in the middle was probably not part of the structure. I think a lava lake generated and just tore a hole straight through the structure, so anything cool that would have been there was just gone. So I went back home on day 96 and I put the mutant blaze core on display. And then I made a bunch of night vision potions because that dungeon used most of mine. And then I got back to heading for the infested temple. While I was following my map, I ended up finding one of my nether portals, and then I saw an Oakwood mansion, and then I saw a giant flying ship. I couldn't reach it, and it didn't look impressive enough to warrant building up for, so I ignored it and kept following the map. The morning of day 98, I saw another huge dungeon, but it was not the infested temple, and I didn't really have time for another detour, so I kept going. Later that day, I finally arrived where the map was pointing. There was no icon on the map showing where the temple was, so I just sort of ran around the area hoping to find it. Also, while I was searching, I realized that the witch scythe was just gone. I don't really know what I did with it or where it went, but hopefully I wouldn't need it for this dungeon. I drank my night vision potion and I dug into the temple. Immediately there was a spawner that spawned spiders with cave spiders on top of them. The webs these spiders placed would make this dungeon an absolute nightmare, which I guess was perfect for the final dungeon. There was another spawner with wither skeletons dressed as spiders, and then another one with super fast cave spiders, but so far, this dungeon was way more chill than the foundry. And with that, the loot was also way worse. The next floor up, there were upside down skeleton spiders on the ceiling, and I wasn't entirely sure how I was meant to deal with that. That is, until I remembered the rope scythe. I tried to pull them down, and then they shot my rope scythe out of the sky and sent it flying. I picked it up, tried again, and then I ended up just pulling myself up there. It wasn't nearly as cool as what I wanted to do, but it works. The next floor up was basically just a copy-paste of the floor that I just did, but these spiders were really trying to get me killed with their webs, trapping me next to creepers and roof skeletons and everything. Throughout this temple, there were spiders placed in the corners of rooms, acting like little web turrets, which was really creative, but it didn't really work out too well for them. At one point, I did kind of almost get myself killed. There were a ton of wither skeleton spawners back to back to back, and I tried to break all of them without my elemental scythe buff, and my health started melting. If I had waited too long and hadn't realized, it would have been all over on day 99. But I broke those spawners and fought off the massive amount of wither skeletons. Some of these upper floors were pure chaos, just tons of wither skeletons and ceiling skeletons, all while I'm trapped in these stupid spider webs, but luckily, the elemental scythe was incredibly OP, so I could handle it. The earthquake ability quickly became my favorite ability because I could just instantly destroy all the nearby mobs at once, and it helped a lot when I got swarmed. Also, these ceiling skeletons were super annoying because for some reason, every single skeleton in this dungeon mod has a punch 10 bow, and getting knocked around so much kinda sucked. This tower might not have been hard, but it was incredibly tall. I was doing this for ages, killing spiders and skeletons over and over and over, many floors up, and it felt never ending. That is, until it ended. At some point on day 99, I reached the top floor, and the loot was garbage. It was literally just more of the same stuff from the rest of the tower, just a bunch of gold and bamboo. There wasn't even a cool final boss up here or anything, just trash. And this dungeon was not easy enough to warrant this type of loot. If I didn't have my elemental scythe buffs, I would have died like 10 times over in armor even better than netherite. It should have been better than this. And I'm not even gonna lie, I kind of wanted a final boss for here, so I sat around and I farmed wither skeleton spawners hoping for a mutant wither skeleton to spawn. And then, just as the sun was setting on day 99, a mutant wither skeleton did in fact spawn. It took a surprising amount of hits given how strong that I was, but I took it out pretty easily. Not exactly final boss level, but it was at least something. I collected all the pieces that it dropped, and then I neared home. Day 100, I crafted the mutant wither skeleton armor. It looked pretty cool, and it made a great final trophy. I put it on display along with a bunch of different scythes. Not all the scythes, but most of the cool ones. So yeah, I had defeated all 3 bosses, taken on insane dungeons, I had gotten the strongest scythes possible, and now the hardcore Reaper journey was complete. And that was 100 days as a Reaper in hardcore Minecraft. Thank you everybody for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and also comment any video or custom boss ideas in the comment section down below. And with that, I will see you all in the next video. Later.